Everyone says AI deepfakes are dangerous and should be banned. But some families are using this exact technology to hear their loved ones speak again. And honestly, it's forcing us to rethink everything we thought we knew about AI ethics. Hey everyone, I'm Mohamed, founder of MDigitalDev. Today we're diving into one of the most controversial and emotionally charged topics in AI right now: the resurrection of deceased pilots' voices using deepfake technology. Over the next 9 minutes, we're breaking down exactly how this technology works, the ethical minefield it creates, and why this moment matters for the future of AI. Let's go. So here's how this all began. In May 2026, a story surfaced that absolutely shook the aviation and AI communities. Families of deceased pilots were using advanced voice synthesis technology, specifically platforms like ElevenLabs, to recreate the voices of their loved ones. We're talking about pilots who died in accidents, often in their final moments. The technology became so advanced that these families could create audio of their deceased relatives saying things they never actually said. And that's where it gets complicated. According to TechCrunch's investigation, this wasn't some fringe experiment. It was already happening in multiple cases across the aviation industry. The emotional appeal is obvious. Families get closure, museums can recreate historical moments, and documentary makers can add authenticity to their stories. But here's the thing. This same technology can be weaponized in seconds. Let me break down the science because it's actually fascinating. Voice resurrection uses what's called neural vocoding and deep learning models. Here's the process. First, AI systems collect audio samples of the target voice. Sometimes just hours of recordings are enough. Platforms like ElevenLabs have trained models on over 29 languages and can clone voices with remarkable accuracy according to their 2025 data. Second, the AI learns the acoustic patterns, speech characteristics, and emotional nuances of that voice. It's not just copying words, it's learning how someone speaks, their pace, their inflection, everything. Third, you feed the system text, and it generates audio that sounds like that person saying things they never said. The accuracy level is shocking. In blind listening tests conducted by voice researchers in 2025, people couldn't distinguish between real recordings and AI-generated ones about 70% of the time. That's a serious problem when you think about potential misuse. And this is exactly the kind of automation challenge we tackle at MDigitalDev, understanding where technology helps humanity and where guardrails are desperately needed. Now let's talk about why this is ethically messy. On one hand, you have legitimate use cases. A pilot's family wants to preserve their loved one's memory. A documentary about aviation history wants to use authentic voices. A museum creates an interactive memorial. These are beautiful applications. But on the other hand, the same technology can spread misinformation at scale. Imagine a deepfake voice recording of a politician making statements they never made, or a voice message appearing to come from a bank asking for your credentials. According to a 2025 MIT study, voice deepfakes could fool authentication systems up to 85% of the time. Here's the contradiction that keeps me up at night. The technology doesn't know the difference between a loving memorial and a malicious fraud. It's neutral. The ethics entirely depend on who's using it and why. And right now, we don't have clear regulations. The European Union started drafting deepfake guidelines in 2025, but they're still vague. The US hasn't passed federal legislation. We're essentially playing ethical catch-up while the technology races ahead. There's also the question of consent and dignity. Should a deceased person's voice be used without their previous permission? Some families say yes, it's their right to memorialize. Others say no, there's something deeply uncomfortable about putting words in a dead person's mouth. The truth is, we haven't answered these questions yet. Let's talk specifics. The TechCrunch article documented at least 3 documented cases of voice resurrection in the aviation industry between 2024 and 2026. One case involved a family creating a final message from their deceased father, a veteran pilot, which they shared at his memorial service. The emotional impact was profound, but it also raised eyebrows. In another case, an aviation museum wanted to recreate interviews with legendary pilots from the 1950s using AI voice synthesis. They had original transcripts and wanted authentic voices. The project was halted when they realized the legal and ethical implications weren't clear. What's interesting is that there have been documented cases of voice deepfakes being misused. In 2024, there were at least 3,000 reported cases of voice impersonation fraud across the United States, according to the FBI. Not all were AI-generated, but the number is growing exponentially. So what are governments and tech companies doing about this? The EU's AI Act, which became enforceable in stages starting 2025, classifies high-risk AI applications. Deepfakes fall into a gray area that's still being defined. Tech companies are implementing watermarking and detection systems. ElevenLabs, for example, added disclaimers and consent verification when voice cloning is requested. But here's the problem. These safeguards are voluntary and can be circumvented by bad actors. Some countries are pushing for legislation that requires explicit consent for voice cloning and bans non-consensual deepfakes entirely. California passed a law in 2024 allowing people to sue for deepfake damages within 20 days of the video being used for election interference. But broader protections? Still missing. The aviation industry specifically is pushing for clearer guidelines. They understand that voice authentication is critical for safety communications, and if deepfakes become indistinguishable, it creates real operational risks. At MDigitalDev, we're seeing companies across industries grapple with similar concerns. How do you leverage AI's incredible capabilities while building ethical guardrails? It's the defining question of this decade. So why should you care? Because this isn't some distant tech issue. Voice deepfakes will affect how you verify information, how you trust communications, and how you think about digital identity. As these technologies become more accessible, and they will, we need to be thoughtful about where we draw lines. The resurrection of deceased pilots' voices is actually a window into a much bigger conversation. How do we create guardrails for AI without stifling innovation? How do we honor human dignity while advancing technology? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're questions that will shape policy, business, and society over the next 5 to 10 years. Part A. Engagement. Here's my question for you. Comment below. If AI could recreate your voice perfectly, should that be allowed without your permission? What's the line? Drop your thoughts. Part B. Subscribe. Subscribe so you don't miss our breakdown next week on how AI deepfakes are already being used in social engineering attacks. This stuff is happening now, and you need to know how to protect yourself. Part C. Website CTA. If you're running a business and worried about AI ethics, automation, and staying ahead of the curve, visit MDigitalDev.com. We help companies navigate exactly these kinds of challenges, building AI systems that are both powerful and responsible. Next week, we're breaking down how to spot AI deepfakes in real time and what companies are doing to defend against them. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.